This is Jacobus Boers. I would like to talk to you a little bit about your international business term paper, Treasure Hunt. Yes, as you know in this course, we use maps a lot. We trying to find our way, and we use rubrics as ways to find where we need to go. And in the end, getting a final grade on your term paper is going to be a little bit like a treasure hunt. In other words, I need you to think about the steps you need to go through, what you need to do in order to get to that treasure. That is that good grade. And then there's no reason that you cannot make an A for the assignment this semester. This term paper is your CTW, or Critical Thinking Through Writing assignment this semester. We have heard from many employers that students that graduate from college do not always have the needed critical thinking skills and the needed writing skills. This is a general problem in higher education, and at Georgia State University we created the CTW approach, in which we specifically work with students on the critical thinking and their writing. In this specific semester, in this course, the International Business Term Paper is your CTW assignment. And since it's a CTW assignment, we are going to go through a process of you submitting a paper, me reviewing it, giving you feedback, allowing you to improve that and resubmit it. And we'll talk about that in a little more detail here in a minute. The term paper will focus, of course, on the fact that this is a writing assignment and that you need to very specifically look at how you write. That is the style you use, the format you use, and yes, certainly the grammar you use. Also, that I will be assessing your critical thinking, the extent to which your writing in your paper reflects critical thinking. So these are two very important elements in this assignment. And then the feedback process is going to require you to submit drafts. And the first feedback you will get is on the originality of your work, which means the extent to which what you wrote is original or is the work of others. In order to not run afoul of your academic honesty policy, it's important that you do your original work. And this feedback is a powerful approach to show you to what extent you are appropriately citing the work of other people when you use it. Also, you will receive feedback using a critical thinking through writing rubric, and we can talk about that in a minute. Once you've received that feedback, you will be able to improve your paper, resubmit it, and of course the idea is that you take the feedback you received in order to resubmit. This is not a straightforward process of we giving you a markup, you fix the errors and resubmit it. The feedback is really going to require you to think about what it is that we tell you and then work on that. Now, this can be very daunting, which is why I will give you a treasure map. Yes, it's a treasure hunt, and in the end, a good grade is going to be the treasure at the end of this road, and this map is going to help you find that. The map I'm going to give you is a rubric. The treasure map that allows you to earn a great grade here is a rubric. The grading for this paper will be based entirely on this rubric. If you do what I ask you to do in this rubric, then you will make an A on the paper. This rubric is going to look at the quality of your critical thinking. It will look at your writing, both format, style, and grammar, and certainly look at your citations, whether you appropriately give credit to the work of others in text and also in the bibliography that you have to attach. I don't care if you use APA format or MLA format, as long as you use either one of these consistently throughout your paper. Let's look at the rubric very specifically. The grading criteria is embodied in a rubric. This rubric asks you specifically to look at your writing and format and also the reasoning of your paper. Those are the critical thinking and writing elements. And as you can see, in terms of writing and format, I'm looking at clarity. That's the structure and the writing of your paper. In reasoning, I'm looking at the precision of your paper, how you use sources and how you cite them. the relevancy of that what you state in the paper, the breadth of your argument, and the logic. This rubric is available in your desire to learn, and we will also spend some time in class looking at it in more detail. Let's look a little bit at the structure of your international business term paper. The paper needs to be based on one of the assigned topics for this course, and we'll look at them here in a minute. And then you need to take that topic, select one of those topics, and apply that to a country other than the United States of America. Using some background research on that topic and the country, you need to think about a thesis and state that thesis or claim that you want to make regarding this specific topic. This thesis needs to be supported by at least 3 pieces of evidence. 3 pieces of evidence why your thesis is true. One of those pieces, at least one of those pieces of evidence needs to be a newspaper article or a media report, and that needs to originate in a country other than the United States. The idea here is that you need to get more than one perspective in this paper, and one of your pieces of evidence needs to reflect that. And very important, you need to show in the paper the analysis, how it is that these pieces of evidence support the claim that you make in your paper. As far as the topics for the paper are concerned, there are 5 topics available to you. I will also allow you to look at a topic other than these if it's very specifically of interest to you, and I approve it prior to you writing your paper. The objective here is to you using this assignment to explore something that's also of interest to you, and therefore I allow this option. The 5 topics are: A, implications of offshoring on global competition; B, the impact of foreign direct investment on economic development; C, the impact of trade on living standards; and D, also specifically approaches in overcoming cross-cultural challenges in international business. And topic E is the consequences of globalization. Very broad topics. You will have to narrow them down based on a specific claim that you make with respect to any one of these topics you pick. And then, of course, apply this to a country other than the United States. As far as the first draft is concerned, the deadline is pretty soon. You may want to look at the schedule of classes or the syllabus and make sure that you are aware. The first draft of this paper is often submitted by students according to the first letter of their last name in order to stagger them. So make sure you know when your first draft is due. It is important that on the first draft, you will only submit the paper in the Desire to Learn, the D2L Dropbox. There's no need to submit in SWoRD. We will do that in drafts 2 and 3. So make sure you submit the paper by the deadline, and then you will receive feedback in Turnitin. Turnitin is an application that runs inside Desire to Learn, and we'll look at this in a little more detail in a minute. Turnitin's feedback is going to come in 2 formats. First, it's going to run automatically a originality report. This takes about 15 to 20 minutes to run after your first submission, and then it'll give you feedback on any issues there are in your paper as far as you appropriately citing sources. You need to check on this and make any corrections if you feel that's important, and then resubmit the paper. If you feel comfortable with your originality report, you do not need to resubmit a second draft. Myself, my GRA will look at the paper and give you feedback. This feedback you will receive in grade mark. It's very important that you return to grade mark to look at this feedback. Typically, this feedback will be available within 1 week from the deadline of your paper. And we'll look at a little more detail in a minute how to retrieve your originality report and your grade mark. So what I'm going to try and do here is show you how to submit your paper in D2L. Go to Assessments, select a Dropbox off the menu, and then it'll show you the Dropbox folders. Here right now we're going to submit under the first folder. You select the appropriate folder and check that you have the right folder to submit in. Click on Add a File and then select Upload and go and select the appropriate folder on your computer. You should be able to scroll through your menus, your folders on your machine until you find the appropriate folder where your paper is. Select that paper, click it, and then verify that it's the right paper. Add it. Again, you want to make sure you verify that you have the right paper there and click on Submit at the bottom. Once you do that, you will see that the system sends you an email. It's a D2L email, and also that it tells you can check the originality report in the View History folder. So go look at View History, and there you will see then your paper, and it'll show you report is in progress. Now, it's going to take a while for it to check your originality, so you may have to come back at some point. Go to Assessments, go to Dropbox, and then important, you'll see there your paper is submitted. You can see this way verify it's there, and click on View History. And if you come back too soon, it'll still show you in progress. It probably takes about 15-20 minutes for this. When you come back at the appropriate time, click on Dropbox, see your paper, View History, and you'll see at some point that report is in now. If you click on that red button under Report, then it'll turn it in, where you will actually be able to see the specific report on the originality. Now, I've selected here a report that I used before as a sample, which means that all 100% of this paper has been reviewed before, submitted before, so it shows it was 100% plagiarized. If you then close out this window, it will take you back. Now let's see very quickly how you can get the feedback in D2L. Go Assessments, Dropbox, where you'll go to the folder. For each draft, there will be a different one. And what you want to do is towards the right, look at the View button. If you click on that, you will get the feedback. It'll show you the rubric at the bottom, and at the top it'll show you Originality Report and the grade mark link. We'll look at that in a minute. On the rubric, it'll show you exactly how much you were scored, and also on the right, you'll get some feedback specifically. In this specific case, on precision, I did not rank the student because there was no real evaluation criteria. In relevancy, got 4, and you see the feedback, and that'll be true for each one of the criteria. The feedback on the right showing you how much you scored, and at the bottom it'll show you overall score and give you some idea about the overall feedback. If you look at the bottom, you'll get all of that in a different format, and of course also the grade on your paper. Now in a minute here we're going to look at your originality report, and when you click on that colored bar, you will go to the originality report, as you can see top left, and this is all in or if you click on grade mark, it'll take you to the grade mark function, where you can very specifically see the feedback that myself or my graduate assistant gave you. Let's look at some more specific examples of papers. Here's an originality report that shows the student got a total of 36%. That's not original. And in each case, it gives a little number at an area and tells me or you where that came from and the percentage of your paper that comes from that specific source. In total, the student got 36% from another source. But what you'll see is that there are quotation marks against each one of these. So it'll tell me where that quote comes from, but it'll also tell me that the student knew that because the student very specifically put that in quotations, and there is an appropriate citation. If you do that, of course it's going to find all of your quotations and flag them, but if they are appropriately cited and in quotation marks, that is completely acceptable, as was in this case. Of course, your bibliography too, since you copied that from somewhere else, is going to show up unless I specifically ask the system not to do that. Now here is another example of a paper that's a little more complicated. See, here is a lot of information that was copied from another source, and on the right it'll tell me where it came from. But in this case there are no quotation marks. Significant amount of this paper, 67%, came from other sources. And in many cases, as you can see, you have huge areas that were copied. Some cases with limited paraphrase, few words changed. That of course is completely unacceptable. If you click on grade mark, and you can also do that by clicking on grade mark inside, you will see what feedback we give you. Some feedback will come in little bubbles like that, in which we tell you something specific, or some of them will be template feedback, as in these cases where interesting background, but is this really relevant to your paper? And then if you scroll down here, we gave more feedback. For instance, here you're writing about coffee. Finally, you get into coffee, which is raising an issue about the relevance. Your comment about the thesis, very promising, but it's kind of late in the paper. And also that we should have topic sentences at the beginning of paragraphs. So here's some examples. I hope they're useful. Your second and third drafts do not only need to be submitted in Desire to Learn Dropbox, but also in SWoRD. These deadlines are on the same day, but it's important to emphasize that you need to submit this in 2 different places. But 3 days after this deadline of submission, you need to also review 3 papers by other students in SWoRD. These papers will be assigned to you blindly. In other words, you will not know who the students are that wrote these papers. And it's very important that you do not miss that deadline, because it will be part of the assignment. After the deadline for people to give feedback on papers, you will also be required to back review the feedback you got. In other words, you will have to give the reviewers of your paper feedback, and there's also a very important deadline on this. We will look at this in a little more detail. The important thing in this is that you will apply the rubric that will be applied to your paper to 4 other papers, and you will get the opportunity to tell folks how useful their feedback to you was in improving your paper. Of course, we will still give you feedback in the Desire to Learn Dropbox, and that feedback will again come in Turnitin, and that will include both your originality report and your grade mark report to specifically tell you what the issues are that myself and my JRA believe are important for you to address. You will repeat this whole process for the third draft, submit the paper in Dropbox and in SWoRD, give feedback to students on their third drafts, and tell them how those that reviewed your paper, how useful their feedback was to you. Here's a screenshot of what it will look like when you submit your paper in SWoRD for drafts second and third. This is the screen that you will use to submit that paper. Once the deadline for submission of paper passes, SWoRD will automatically assign 4 other papers by other students to you for a blind review. You will not know who those students are, and you will simply be asked to look at their papers, give them feedback, and also apply the rubric. This is a very important part of you understanding relatively to other students where you are in your assignment, see how other people approach the problems, and also to learn from each other. This is a very powerful process. Once the deadline passes for you giving students feedback on their papers, you will be asked to go to SWoRD again and to back evaluate the review you received. In other words, to give those that reviewed your paper feedback on how useful that feedback was. This is a very important skill to develop, the ability to get feedback from others, to give feedback to others, and also to tell them how useful that feedback is. Very important skill to develop. Once you've received feedback on the third draft, you will be able to submit your final version of the paper. This is not right at the end of the semester, so be careful that you make sure you know what the deadline is. For the final version, again, we do not need to submit in SWoRD. You only submit in Desire to Learn in the Dropbox as before. And of course, you will then get feedback. Again, originality report immediately. Make very sure at this point in the final version that you are not running afoul of plagiarism issues, because if there are significant issues, I will not grade your paper. And yes, I will grade personally as instructor every final paper student submits. GRAs will not do that. I will do that. Give you a final grade using the rubric. So that brings us to the end. Final paper submitted, grade received. Yes, it looks a little bit tricky. It's a treasure hunt. There's no question about it. The wonderful thing is you have a map. You have a map, the rubric that'll allow you to follow step for step what you need to do in order to earn that A in this assignment for your BUSA 3000. Thank you.